Hey, true believers, Chris Mack coming at you with Strongbox, The Big Bad Book of Boon, Issue 2. And this book is just getting progressively better. The first issue, kind of had that 1930-ish noir detective feeling, but with a little bit more. And it had that character buildup that you need in order to understand the world and the people living within. This one still has that tone, but it really starts to launch off in the left field, and you're like, what the hell is going on? In a good way, like excellent storytelling. So let's dive into this, shall we? So this is issue 2. The creators are written and created by H. Thomas Ullman, rendered to life by Sebastian Sala, J.M. Regnoir, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and Minan Giblist. Like I said, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, I'm so sorry. And I like how each book starts out as murder mystery, as related to Frank Boon. And you just kind of get this POV shot and says, come again, trouble, his business, a thrilling publication from the Cold War era. And it just really sets that feeling of that time period. So you jump in, and it picks up where the last book left off, where if you remember, if you watched the last review, there was this little beast that this murder victim threw up, and it was lodged in her throat when the coroner looked at it, bit her, and took off. And then it ran into the janitorial closet, and this janitor was saying, I don't like the creepy crawlies. So Boon is questioning him, and this guy, you can tell he's not the brightest crayon in the box. He's a little standoffish. He's like, bull boogers. You can't just threaten BW Fink. I'll shove this here mop straight up. And I like how Boon, even though as we saw in the last issue, how he beat the living snot out of all those thugs, he's also can be a very patient man. To a degree, he reminds me of Marv from Sin City, where he's this very violent person that just seems like a man out of time for his era, where if you remember, I don't know if they said in the comic, it's been a while since I read the books, but the movie, when they said Marv was very much like someone you could see in medieval days carrying a battle axe and whatnot, being very Conan, I very much feel that as Frank Boon. But again, the reason that I say this is because instead of attacking this janitor, he just goes, mobile infantry. You seen combat? 383 Infantry Regiment back in 44. Took out a dozen enemy pillboxes for MacArthur myself. Sure as did. And so Frank is able to say, I was in the military too, and kind of find that bond, which very much de-escalates the situation, and is able to kind of get the idea of, the clues of this beast. Like he's showing the drawing, saying, have you seen something like this? And he comes to find out that these books that this janitor is reading, which to a degree seems kind of, what do you want to call it, convenient, but at the same time launches you into the story, because he's reading these science fiction novels, and Boone's just like, always hated science fiction. But he notices within the book that the beast here, it's almost the same. So he borrows the books, and he needs to find out who this Rosemary Pellwood is, who's the author of these stories. And while that's happening, we come back, we see Chief Demerit, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's the police chief. And I like how they make sure to show this panel of his hands, because if you remember, the coroner was bitten as well. And what was her name? It's not Cuddle Cakes, because the chief's running to the door, and he goes, you stay put, Cuddle Cakes, I'll get some ice. And that just kind of made me laugh. So they're trying to piece together where this beast is, what's it all about, what's this killer's MO. And so we'll just kind of skip past that. There's a kind of a omen. They didn't notice this before, but this was left behind. And they're saying that this thing must be sentient. The coroner here, she goes, affirmative, Commissioner Dermot, but how has it appeared as confusing as what appears to be some sort of lingual pattern in the blood? And so Frank can't sleep. And what I want to say about this panel that I really appreciated is the fact that, again, this book reads like an old school noir detective like movie and or novel. So it only makes sense that Boon would live in an old school 30-esque movie theater. And I like that. And after we get the establishing shot, there's a panel I want to show you. But apparently it has disappeared. But there's a panel in here where it shows him working out. And it shows like the, what do you call it? The lease on where he's living. And I don't know, it really helps kind of set, like this book is supposed to be set in the 80s, but the feelings, it's just very ambiguous. And just showing that he lives in something like that is just a very cool idea. Now, him being a detective, working seemingly always on the clock. Late at night, he can't sleep, so he comes to visit the writer of those novels. And at first, she kind of plays a little coy with him. But she goes, this beast, she goes, are you sure this is what you saw? She goes, it's actually from a poem, which I'll go ahead and leave this here. I don't want to read all of it. Go ahead and pause it and read that at your convenience. But you come to find out that this beast is called the Banthwaite. It says, when it comes, the Banthwaite comes. And she goes, it's not just a poem, it's an omen. And so she's like, how was she murdered? And she goes, was her neck severed? Yes. Were her eyes taken? Yes. And so Pellwater's like, then he's returned at last. I recognized the method. So things start to, the plot begins to unfold, essentially. And you're invested at this point. Because I like how he says, then can you tell me what this lingual pattern means? And she doesn't tell him. She's like, I can't say. But I like, again, show, don't tell. Shows that she's actually keeping things from Boon. Why? We don't know yet. Now, later that night, the coroner, which I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, she asks Frank to come by. And you see that she's dressed rather scantily. You're just kind of like, oh my God. And I like why he's talking to her is like, Grandma in the picture frame, Grandma in the picture frame, ice cold shower. Need a nice cold shower. And the way that she's drawn here, like I like how it's a complete 180 from the kind of the nerdy girl that we saw at the police station. And you notice that her, the tone also in how she speaks begins to change. Because at first you're thinking she wants Boon to talk to her about the case. But then she's just like, I'm guilty. I did it. Did what? I've fallen. We all fall, don't we? I've fallen for someone. Please don't be upset. And she's drinking wine. There's some very intimate moments. And then, if we remember the jogger from the first issue, she begins to vomit. And so I like how when you're reading it, you're just thinking, whoa, this seems all over the place. But it makes sense in the context of the story of what this Banthwaite can do. And so we see another one. We get the entrance of the killer. And I like how even in the midst of all this terror, she goes, I'm so out to lunch right now. And it's like, if you want to think about it in terms of the book, it's like the final laugh before the drama hits. What do I mean by that? What's the fate of Dr. Watts? I must say, please pick up Strongbox, the Big Bag Book of Boon, issue 2. At this point, I am fully invested. We kind of get a look at what the killer looks like. Interesting how her character changes so quick. And, we get more insight into Boon's character, this world, And how this story initially starts out, as I've said, kind of more not enough coffee, detective-y, even if that's a word, and just goes almost full tilt science fiction. That was kind of a craze there in the 70s and 80s. So with that said, guys, if you've enjoyed this book, please, first and foremost, support your local comic shop and see if they can get this ordered for you. If not, then I'll make sure to leave some links where you guys can purchase this online so you can enjoy this as much as I have. So again, shout out to the writer, which if you guys need to, we'll go ahead and put his name here again, H. Thomas Altman. Thank you so much for sending these books to me. I've been having an absolute blast reading and review these. I very much appreciate it. So with that said, I hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.